Where are we headed?
We're going to Camp Porcelain Peak.
Oh, yeah. Planning on smoking a little dope, having a little premarital sex, and getting slaughtered?
Here are your totally rad camp counselors, Tone, John, and Anthony.
Good morning, campers. Nailed it this time. Welcome back to Camp Porcelain Peak, the strange and scary summer camp.
So strange, so scary.
Covering all things horror and science fiction. We are presented by wordsforweirdos.com, and we are very excited to talk to you today about the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. I'm Counselor Tone, and I am joined by Counselor John and Counselor Anthony, just like Constance said. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing all right. I've been baking out in the sun pretty much all day today. I'm surprisingly not burnt, but I'm definitely exhausted. So we're in for a Sleepy John podcast.
Well, I'm sure that once we start being assholes like we usually do right around the time that trivia starts, that you'll get woken up. How are you doing?
I'm already kind of there.
There you go. See, the pod just brings out the best in everybody.
Yep.
What about you, Counselor Anthony? How is your Wednesday treating you?
I am having a pretty good. I'm having a pretty good Wednesday. I felt like
Monday, actually, for the future listeners.
Yeah, I'm having a pretty good day of the week, whatever it is. I actually wanted to mention a little spooky bit of something that happened to me yesterday.
Ooh.
So I was getting ready to do my trivia question for our Instagram story trivia, which hopefully we've done again since when you hear this. But I'm sitting with my girlfriend out at a covered well on the property thinking, maybe I should look at what my trivia question is and say it into the well. Then I thought, nah, that's hella dumb. So then I went back to the house and I pull out my phone and I say, wonder what my trivia question is. I scroll to the card and the question is, what is the name of the vengeful entity that comes out of the well in The Ring from 2002? And then a shiver went straight down my spine.
Dude, that is actually really spooky.
Yeah, it was very strange. Yeah.
I can hit you with one layer that's going to add some additional spook factor. I recorded that trivia question, and it would not upload. And during that time, yours uploaded.
Wow. Yeah. See,
Dude, she was trying to get you.
yeah, Samara. To give away that, and we gave away the answers today, right? Yeah. So Samara.
By the time they hear this, that's long.
Yeah. Well, she's after me, so if by the time you hear this episode I am dead, I'm super sorry. I hope my replacement is just as much of a camp stud and an internet darling as I was.
You better start making some copies of some VHSs, my dude. Just every VHS you can find, I'm making a copy of that.
But yeah, I thought it was super strange. I was like, okay, what are the chances that I thought about doing that? And then my question was literally about, oh well.
That is creepy and coincidental. I am glad that you guys are doing so well. This is Season 2, Episode
38.
As mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about a true crime story titled The Oklahoma Girl Scout Murders. John's going to lead us on that. I am going in pretty much blind. Anthony is going in semi-blind, maybe one eye closed.
Yeah. I got like one YouTube video and some Wikipedia reading under my belt, so, you know, amateur gumshoe over here.
Yeah, there's some interesting folds to this story. It'll be a pretty gnarly discussion.
I'm excited about it. These true crime episodes are usually pretty fun, and I like when we pick stuff that isn't super well known, so I'm excited to dive into that. We also are going to be doing news and a new trivia for you guys, one that we actually haven't personally done, so that should be exciting as well. And then we'll wrap this whole bad boy up with letting you know how we're going to end Camp Porcelain Peak, because this is our second to last camp episode.
Yeah.
I don't want to go home, guys.
It's been a blast doing it, but I am ready to get back to the normal shit of the show.
Yeah, no, in all honesty, the camp thing is cool, but even I'm like getting that that I'm getting
Homesick.
homesick for regular Porcelain Peak. See, I almost called it camp. I'm so used to calling it Camp Porcelain Peak now. I don't know what I'm going to do when I can't call everybody campers and call you guys counselors, and we're just nothing again.
The peeps. So before we get into news, I do want to mention briefly that we have now officially launched a Patreon. So if you guys head over to that, it's in our link tree. It's just patreon.com/porcelainpeak. And you can become a porcelain peep all the way up to a producer, and there's going to be benefits to each level depending on what you want to do and what you want to contribute. Obviously, anything you do, even just listening to the fucking show, we super appreciate, and thank you in advance for all that you do.
Yeah, I mean, we painstakingly sat and worked through every single one of the tiers for that Patreon in order to make sure that everyone's getting a good return on investment, to make sure that, you know, that there are things like bonus episodes and watch parties and access to being able to help us pick topics for trivia or for just episodes in general. Like, trying to make sure that we get the audience as involved as possible in order to make it worth your while if you do decide to do that. But like Anthony said, just listening to the episode, giving us the old rate, share, and subscribe type stuff is more than enough. But we would be super grateful if you were able to join us on Patreon as well.
Yeah, and while you guys were sweating it out and crying over setting up this Patreon, I was probably watching the sunset, eating a slice of homemade pizza. But it does get the Internet Darling stamp of approval. I think the Patreon looks great, and as someone who subscribes to other creators' Patreons myself, I really wanted to make sure that ours had benefits that I, as a listener to this podcast, would like, and I think it definitely does. So
yeah, like John was saying, we went through a lot of this, and we had a kind of a game plan, and then it morphed to become more reasonable, and also to include a lot more similar to like what you were saying, stuff that we think that you would like. So I mean, we're talking stickers, T-shirts, mugs, all kinds of different stuff, early access. I think that no matter which level you pick, it's going to be a good time, and it's going to be worth your while, and we hope so. We really do. And if you guys have feedback on that, then feel free to let us know. Maybe we can add some more benefits as you guys see fit. But enough of that stuff. All the logistics out the way. Let's go ahead and jump into our news.
You see, Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
We are going to kick it over to John to start us off with some news this week. John, what you got for us, boy?
So, with the current state of the box office and with theaters being pushed back for their openings again and again and again because of COVID-19, there have been a lot of releases that have been pushed back. Just to give you some of the highlights, one of the ones we're most looking forward to on the show, Saint Maud by A24. That one is getting pulled from release and will get released at a different date. No announcement on that so far. Ghostbusters Afterlife was supposed to come out already based on our current time frame. That one's been pushed back.
And I think I saw something that said coincidentally Ghostbusters
Yeah.
is at the top of the box office right now.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of those older films that have been playing in drive-ins that have been getting that treatment and that have been topping the box office numbers. Candyman, that one is getting pushed a full month. There's a potential that might get pushed again depending on the situation. And I believe they have also announced that Stranger Things Season 4 is also going to get pushed due to the fact that they didn't have all of the principal photography and everything taken care of. I believe so.
Yes, from what I saw was that they were talking about potentially resuming production soon. So that means that this thing isn't even finished. So they have a ton of work to do left for that. So I doubt that we're getting that anytime soon.
Yeah.
yeah, from what because I keep track of this every week too, and right now the countdown to new movies is like the countdown to that Russell Crowe movie that's still supposed to come out, and then New Mutants is still slated for what, like August or something, but
that's gonna get pushed.
That's gonna get pushed absolutely. Which, I mean, come on, it's New Mutants. We've had this discussion a million times, but there's a real blood curse on that movie.
Tenet as well. Tenet got pushed again.
But the more this goes on, the more, and like the later we get into the summer, and nothing seems to really be changing, at least in our country, mostly just getting worse in this respect. I don't really see myself getting back to a movie theater probably before the end of this year, which is with everything getting pushed to next year anyway. It's like when movie theaters do open, they're going to be slating a lot of Ghostbusters, Jaws, Jurassic Park type movies to make up for the fact that they want to be open and doing business, but these studios are going to wait until people are comfortable going back to the movie theaters.
I do see a lot of people making rash decisions as far as when they're setting their release dates for, in order to try to be like, oh yeah, there's a potential the theaters might open before the end of the year, so we'll push it back 2 months. I think that that's unrealistic. I do think that there is a particular movie that is doing it the right way and is making something realistic, and you wanted me to segue you into that film.
Such a beautiful segue. That was the best two-wheeled scooter I've ever seen.
Top of the line, all the bells and whistles.
Yes, so not only is this movie getting pushed back, but there's also a very teasery teaser released for Halloween Kills, which is getting an October 2021 release date. So they were like, yeah, fuck it, if we can't release it this October, we'll just do it next year. Which is great, because it is an October movie. I don't want to see that shit in January.
Yeah.
And the teaser, I almost didn't watch it, but I was like, fuck it. It is a teaser, and usually teasers are as far as I'll go. It was worth it. It's
Tickled your fancy.
It's like 30 seconds, and most of that is just saying Halloween Kills 2021. And the rest of it is basically Laurie screaming, which is great.
Yeah, I actually saw a really good video the other day that was about screams in horror movies. It was an acting coach. I think it was something that Insider did or something like that. But they talked about Jamie Lee Curtis and how her screams have actually gotten more convincing and realistic in the new legacy sequel version than they were in the original. And he talks about how she probably went back and looked at those original screams, which he said were very good for the time. But he was like, she's gotten even better. So she still holds that title. So I'm excited to see.
Ages like a fine wine.
Yeah, well, I mean, she is
a fine wine.
A scream queen.
Yeah, and I mean, and you got to have a clear digestive system to get those kind of big guttural screams. So, Activia.
That was the difference. That's what got her to where she is between the original and the legacy.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, Counselor Anthony? You had some news for us too, yes?
Franklin. I think that this is the most important news that we've gotten in quite a while, which is that Leigh Whannell is maybe in talks with Blumhouse to direct their Wolfman movie that we already discussed is supposed to involve Ryan Gosling as the lead. We talked about how we felt about Ryan Gosling, but now we can talk about how we feel about Leigh Whannell heading that project, because that obviously means they're looking at potentially having him run their whole Universal Monsters thing. If he does a couple of these, it seems like that's going to be the indication. We also talked about how he has that upgrade project in the works, so that's something that he already has going on. Do we think that's going to distract one from the other? I'm personally excited because this is what we were, at least what I was hoping for from the beginning when they announced that they were doing a Wolfman movie. Is I was like, well, I hope Whannell's involved. I hope that that's the approach they take. Maybe a little bit more difficult to pull off in that same sort of way as The Invisible Man was able to be pulled off with a character like Wolfman. But I'm a diehard fan of Ryan Gosling and Leigh Whannell. So for me, that was like, okay, I'm bringing this news.
I feel like I would be more comfortable, at least right now, seeing Whannell in maybe a producer role.
I was going to say the same thing.
Because Upgrade and Invisible Man are, although Invisible Man only slightly more futuristic,
sci-fi and
right, and grounded in a way. You know what I mean? And Invisible Man and Wolfman is a lot more fantastical in its approach to the story. So if he can make it grounded and kind of fit those two styles, because we really liked those styles, and we've even talked about how Upgrade is kind of Frankensteinian. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that he can do it. But I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be a good blend between those two styles of his. My
problem, my hesitation would be more in the direction of this involving Whannell and Gosling, because I almost would like to see a lesser known actor. I would have almost liked to have rather seen Oliver Jackson Cohen, who played Adrian in Invisible Man, come back for this to play Wolfman. I feel like he fits that same sort of aesthetic, and I've seen him in other things like Hill House, and he's a really great actor. So I would have liked that. Gosling seems like a really big Hollywood name to be involved with a Leigh Whannell project, but I love Gosling as an actor, and with Whannell, honestly, we're talking about the Wolfman, the original version, and it's the same argument that you could make about, hey, the Invisible Man is a very fantastical, he drinks a magic potion thing, and Whannell pulled it off. You could easily make a Wolfman movie that is more body horror science project type thing. He could pull it off in the exact same way almost.
That's a good point.
And make it a really terrifying kind of body horror, what it would actually be like to go through that kind of transformation and what that would mean.
Needs a cure more than a silver bullet or something like that.
Yeah, and you could with that kind of transformation, there's a million different routes you could go in terms of applying the social themes to it, like Invisible Man did with like the domestic abuse and things like that. So many different paths you could go. So thinking about it in that respect, think it's a really good move. But again, this is a probably maybe. This was an article that just came out saying they're in talks. So we don't know if he could end up landing in a producer role. That could be what the news actually is.
Yeah, I think he's on record as of now saying that he didn't want to be like, oh, for sure, I'm going to be in charge of all of the Universal Monsters movies. He went on record saying, I wouldn't have made Invisible Man if I didn't have a dope idea for Invisible Man.
Yeah, and the article said that that Blumhouse was looking at his pitch, which indicates to me, if the news is correct, that he has a pitch. He has an angle that he wants to come from. Doesn't necessarily mean that's the pitch they'll take, but with his foot already in the door and how successful Invisible Man was, I'd be shocked if he makes a pitch and they don't take it and they don't run with it. So,
I mean, knowing that, I would say it sounds pretty good. I'm excited for whatever it is because we haven't got a good werewolf movie in a while, especially a mainstream werewolf movie. You know what I mean?
And that's
in many moons.
There we go.
John's back. He's awake.
It's alive.
All right, that is going to wrap it up for our news segment this week. If you want to check out more news, then head over to Twitter, where actually the intern is providing us with all kinds of good stuff, so much that we can't talk about all of it on the show. So now that's done, we're going to go ahead and jump into our new, not totally 80s, not Stranger Things, not Trivial Pursuit, not Pass the Popcorn, not some made-up shit John did, trivia segment. John?
New trivia!
So shiny. Trivia.
We can't stop now.
Dad, leave us alone.
Then answer the question. Same category.
Oh, please stop.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason! Jason!
I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It was Jason.
Afraid not. No way.
All right, so this one is called, this is a crazy title, I'm not really sure how they came up with it, Horror Trivia.
What?
This one consists of one card with 2 questions.
Oh, these are cool.
You're discovering it with us. It's so cool. All right, so in typical fashion, I, Counselor Tone, will read to Counselor John, and then Counselor John's going to read to Counselor Anthony.
You know who it
and then
is.
Counselor Anthony will read back to me. Here we go. Counselor John. Oh, fucking kidding me. This is very coincidental. What classic horror movie is set in Haddonfield, Illinois?
That's going to be Halloween.
Wrong. Yeah, it's that is correct. Good job, John.
But is that Halloween, or Halloween?
Or Halloween 2, Halloween 3,
or Halloween 2.
4, or Halloween H2O.
Is that one in Haddonfield too?
Is it?
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
know. Anyway, let's move on.
All right.
We get it. Halloween's.
Halloweens. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Name the movie.
Alien.
Oh, it's The Fly.
Fuck, I knew it was one of those two. I was thinking of the poster, and I was like the green on the poster. Counselor Tone, we have such sights to show you. Name the movie.
Oh, that's tough. We have such sights to show you. Hellraiser.
Ooh, sorry, it was The Fly. Yeah, it's Hellraiser.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That was a total guess, dude. I feel like that's like a pinhead thing. Like, check out my porn.
Check out
my porn.
Check out my porn.
check out my pins.
My pin porn. Check out my Pinterest board of pin porn.
Dude, I fucking hate Pinterest. Every time I search for shit, it pops up. I'm like, no, I don't want to open it to cap. Let me see the fucking thing.
But shouldn't that be the new Pinterest like tagline when you go to the website? Is we have such sights to show you?
Yes.
It's actually brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, at the end of the first round, it's going to be 1-0-1, and we're going to keep going. John, Counselor, jiggity, JB John. What are the 7 deadly sins featured in the movie 7?
You're kidding.
No, I'm not.
What exactly was the question again?
The 7 sins from the deadly movie 7.
So name the 7 sins is what it's asking for?
Yeah, dude, I read that clear as day.
No, describe like what they are,
Yeah.
their
Okay,
importance in the Bible.
So let's see. We had this question in our last trivia.
Yes.
Can you succeed where we both failed last time?
All right. Lust, greed, pride, wrath, gluttony, envy, and sloth.
Yeah, nailed it, my guy.
Yeah.
I am impressed, and that's going to be a lot easier to edit than it was the last time we did that. There weren't 16 ums.
And 12 pauses.
Yeah.
Glutton. Thou shalt not.
Counselor Anthony, what 2005 movie involves a group of friends who get trapped in a cave and encounter strange, bloodthirsty creatures?
It's a pretty decent movie called The Descent.
Well played, sir. Well
It is
played.
indeed The Descent.
Awesome. Counselor Tone. In the movie Aliens, why did Ripley not want to bring Bishop on the mission?
Because he's a robot, an android. He's a cybernetic organism.
You are correct. It's because he was an android.
Cybernetic organism.
What was that?
It's because he was full of milk.
Was that Arnold and Morgan Freeman?
Yes, both.
Arnold Freeman.
God.
Andy Dufresne.
There you go.
God.
God.
Morgan.
I thought
That went Randy Newman super quick.
Sure, people got. Counselor John's got another question in. Ju-on was the inspiration for what American horror? Ju-on was the inspiration for what American horror film?
Wow, it's almost like we were just talking about this.
That would be The Grudge.
Yes. That is correct, man. You're killing it.
My questions have been very easy. Counselor Anthony, who was the host in the Tales from the Crypt TV series?
That's the perfect question for you.
Yeah,
know it is.
No, I know. Frank Len Crypt Keeper, the Crypt Keeper, voiced by John Cassier.
Damn, bonus points.
I don't see a Frank Len Crypt Keeper, but it is indeed the Crypt Keeper.
Good job, dude.
Boils and goose.
We're looking like we know some trivia all of a sudden,
I know,
huh?
right?
Maybe when it's not super obscure foreign films.
I know, right?
It's like a limitless situation. We all sound hella smart right now, but as soon as this is over, we're all just gonna go back to being super dumb. Counselor Tone, what actress plays Claire Spencer in the movie What Lies Beneath?
So I know the main actress that was in that, but I don't know if that's Claire Spencer. So I would just say, oh fuck, I forgot her name. Michelle Pfeiffer.
You are correct.
Yes.
It's Michelle Pfeiffer.
nice.
I
Good
almost
job.
said Nicole Kidman.
You're like, Nicole Pfeiffer.
Nicole Pfeiffer.
Different,
Michelle Kidman.
different Batman love interest.
All right, so at the end of the third round, John is sitting at tres. Counselor Anthony is at deux. And I am also at 3.
Yeah, nice.
Here we go.
I like it.
Counselor John. Subjects believe they are part of a study on insomnia and end up being terrorized by Hugh Crane's ghost in what 1999 film?
Is it Flatliners?
That is incorrect.
I figured as much.
Hugh Crane, like the characters from The Haunting of Hill House, it's The Haunting.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
That was the first version of that story that I ever saw as a kid.
I haven't seen it or The Haunting of Hill House. Based on a book written by Jay Anson, what 2005 Supernatural remake stars Ryan Reynolds and Melissa George?
Is it the Amityville Horror?
It is indeed the Amityville Horror.
Nice.
That was literally the only Ryan Reynolds horror movie I could think of. Has he done any other horror? He
Buried.
should. Oh, yeah. That's a good movie. I like that movie a lot. Counselor Tone, what is the name of the character killed in the famous shower scene in the movie Psycho?
Psycho!
Is it Marion Crane?
You are correct.
Okay.
Nice.
Sweating, dude. All right, so at the end of that round now, John is sitting at 3, Anthony is at 3, and I'm sitting at 4. Let's see if we can keep this ball rolling. John, name this movie. The quote is, "I'm your number one fan." Time to take a guess. Time to take a guess. John sitting here waiting, and it's taking too
He's stalling.
long. Like Joseph guessed this.
Oh, I'm your number one fan. Shit.
You're gonna punch yourself in the dick if you miss it.
I probably will.
I'll punch you in the dick if you miss it if you want me to.
I'll punch you in the dick if you don't answer the question pretty soon.
Damn.
Shit, I'll punch you in the dick if you get it right. It's up to you, dude. If you want to get punched in the dick, we're here for you.
And I'm sure the
glad
listeners would be more than happy.
That's what the two tones do.
I'm glad that you're at least letting me give consent.
Hey, always.
I'm your number one fan. Is that gonna be Misery?
That is Misery.
All right.
Thank God. I was gonna be mad for you if you didn't get that.
I don't know why Misery was. It was just somewhere way in the back of the catalog, then I was like, "Oh, it's fucking Misery."
Literally, my first thought was Swim Fan. That movie, Swim Fan.
I'm your number one swim fan. That would have been hilarious if that was like the quote.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
I'm
really,
your number one Swim Fan.
I'm really sad that it took me that long to come up with that.
Well, you got it. So.
But you would have punched yourself in the dick if you missed that, right?
True. I would have hobbled myself here on camera.
That's, again, too far, dude.
Counselor Anthony, name the movie with the tagline, "In space, no one can eat ice cream."
Oh, shit. That got me.
You just got thoughted.
I did. He's like, you thought?
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
It is indeed Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Wow.
Nice. I'm pretty sure that came up on one of the other questions, too.
That was from our very first trivia tirade. Because you had an entire segment that was based around taglines.
That's right.
And one of them was that you did like an entire series based on ones that are based off of Alien.
That's cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm such a cool guy.
No, I was just grasping it. Like that was literally the only thing I could think where that tagline would make any sense. And I did just see that movie recently, so
Nice.
it's a good time. The Chiodos brothers. Counselor Tone, this 1931 movie features the classic line, "It's alive." It's alive.
I love the fucking lack of enthusiasm. I'm going to say Frankenstein.
You're correct. I'm not a Frankenstein fan, so I can't.
Just zoom into your tattoo.
You lie?
Just zoom into your tattoo, and it's like.
I like how now you're giving me like music requests to put into the videos. Make sure the joke has this specific joke music in it.
If we use John C, then we can't get in trouble. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'll do is I'll just clip the audio of you doing that. Yeah.
All right, so at the end of that round, John now has 4.
Yep, 4.
Anthony's got 4, and I've got 5.
Oh, shit, son.
Here's the last round. Counselor JB, what 2013 Guillermo del Toro film features a young couple who take in their 2 feral nieces and a supernatural spirit?
I'm going to say Pan's Labyrinth.
It is Mama.
See, what I was going to
bummer.
say is it's not. I don't think it's fair that the question said Guillermo del Toro film because it was directed by Andy Muschietti.
Okay, yeah. That's why I didn't even think of that. I was like, I don't think this is Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, it was directed by the guy who did it. So
The other movie I was going to say would have been Devil's Backbone, but...
Yeah, as soon as he said that, I was like, I know what it is, but only because I know that, like, I looked into that director, like, in his other stuff. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Counselor Anthony, who wrote the 1981 film An American Werewolf in London?
Ooh.
I'll just say it was Landis.
It was indeed John Landis.
Cool, I wasn't sure if he had written and directed, but I thought I had seen that, so... Sweet. What horror franchise centers around a group of survivors who escape death and are killed one by one in freak accidents?
Stare at him. Stare at him. Just put on the pressure.
Final Destination franchise. The Final Destination franchise? I don't know. What do you want me to say?
Final Destination. Yeah, you got it, man.
High five. That was like, I mean, technically a sweep. I mean, a sweep of all the questions.
Sweep of all the questions.
And also that trivia was, while not terribly difficult compared to other horror trivia we've done, there were some tricky questions on there.
Yeah,
so
some tricky dicks, eh?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say that it was really difficult because I lost. So we got to go to an easier trivia, guys.
That will wrap it up for trivia this week. Crown stays with me for the second week in a row for my two-peak streak.
Your old two-peat street.
The old two-peak.
I'm gonna go ahead and steal that shit next week. You just watch.
I hope you do. I hope that we all win somehow.
Past me.
Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. If you want to see us do that live and scramble through a new set of trivia questions, then head over to our YouTube channel and you can see us rocking the trivia in all of our stunning yellow light glory. And keep an eye out / ear out for trivia that we have been posting to Instagram on the stories. Try and get you guys involved with that because we've gotten some feedback from listeners saying that they are yelling at us listening to episodes because we haven't been doing too great at the 80s trivia. So hopefully we redeemed ourselves a little bit.
Speak for yourself. I've been fucking killing it at 80s trivia.
That's true. You did great, but I did not. I'm talking to you, Denver. All right, so we will go ahead and get started with our main discussion, the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders.
Hello, weirdos. Hello, creeps. Here I am at Camp Porcelainpeak. Camp is really scary and strange, and they say all the counselors are deranged. I went swimming with a kid named Jason. Lost some counselors were sucking faces. You remember that girl with Ricky? Turns out she's a dude and showed us her dickie. We tell stories around the fire about killers who won't retire. Most of them all like to wear masks, and they'll slash us if we drink or smoke on some grass. Don't be scared or flip your lids. Killers don't always hurt us kids. Plus we rarely go out alone. We're more scared than being on its own.
So you might be wondering why we decided to go with the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders, and you will find out quickly that this is a series of murders that took place at a summer camp, which is why we decided to do it for our Camp Porcelainpeak. I have decided to mostly go in blind with just a brief understanding of what happened because I also wanted to be excited like the listeners to let this unfold in front of me. So John did a majority of the research, so I will let him take it away.
So I looked at some of the basic things like Wikipedia and that sort of stuff, but I also followed all of the tendrils off of Wikipedia, following all of the sources, and then followed those sources to other
Because
information.
the Wikipedia article on this kind of sucks.
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
very
short.
basic.
It's very brief.
Yeah, just to kind of give you the outline of what took place, says the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders is an unsolved murder case that occurred on the morning of June 13th, 1977 at Camp Scott in Mays County, Oklahoma. As far as that goes, they only really dig into like the main person who was potentially the killer, the three girls that were murdered, kind of some of the basic information about how they died, and it's pretty gruesome even just looking at kind of the basics of this. So they...
Is it safe to assume that they were Girl Scouts?
Yes, they were Girl Scouts. They were all between the ages of 8 and 10.
In Oklahoma.
Oh.
Yeah.
So was it a Girl Scout camp? Is that a thing?
Yes, it was a Girl Scout camp outing.
Okay.
So they were at a campgrounds. There were several different tents, and they were in the tent that was the furthest from counselors and from scout leaders and all that sort of stuff. So their tent was furthest out, and apparently during the evening they had received a note that basically said like, "Oh, there's a tent, and all the girls in that tent are gonna die." But it wasn't the same tent; it was a different tent.
It was from
Who
what
received that note?
So from what I read, what happened with the note? So basically, this was like a couple weeks, if not like a month, or more before the camp actually opened. They were doing prep, like training to open the camp, and one of the women found that her cabin had been ransacked, and not much had been taken, but all of her donuts in a donut box in the room had been taken, and a note had been left in the box or on the box that basically said, "I'm planning to kill people who are in, tent 1 or whatever. I'm going to kill 3 girls. And the note went on to ramble about Martians and things like that. And so they kind of brushed it off as a hoax or a prank and didn't take it seriously, which would end up biting everyone in the ass and leading to some pretty awful stuff.
Do they believe that the person that wrote the note is the one that murdered the girls?
I don't believe so. Just based on the specifics of the note and the time frame, the person that they kind of have their finger pointed at as to who may have committed these murders was a prison escapee. So he had escaped from jail and was just kind of living off of the land in the area where this camp was at. And basically they're saying that he lived kind of like in a cave off to the side. So if it took place a month beforehand where they got that information, he technically, I think, still would have been out, but I'm not sure if they believe it was him who wrote the note or not.
Well, that's super weird then, that there's just a crazy person and then a murderous crazy person.
So there's been a lot in the time since the murders occurred in terms of lawsuits against the camp. I mean, the camp shut down as soon as right after the murders happened and hasn't been open since. It never opened again. But there were lawsuits from the families because when they found out things like this note had been something that the counselors were aware of and decided not to tell anybody, that was seen as being negligent. And there are other things that happened throughout the night, like people reporting having heard things screaming, having heard noises in the woods and doing moaning and doing nothing about it. That has really come back on those counselors. And it reminds me a lot of what you see in these slasher movies. I mean, obviously that's a fictional take on this whole thing, but it's scary to think that that's something that could actually happen, is that negligent camp counselors could lead to the actual death of children. It's a really terrifying thing to think could happen in real life.
Well, and not only that, I mean, these girls, they suffered. I mean, it was a situation where they were physically assaulted before the killings. And I believe they all died, I think it was from being strangled, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so...
Were they sexually assaulted?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So two of them... Do you have the names, John, in your research?
The names of the girls are Lori Lee Farmer, Michelle Heather Goose, or Gus, or it's Guse, and Doris Denise Milner.
So, from what I read, I believe the first 2 girls died from blunt force trauma. They were bludgeoned, assaulted, and then pulled out of the tent. The third girl, Milner, I believe, was tied up and taken out of the tent and assaulted, and then she died from strangulation, as far as they could tell. And then all 3 of the girls were stuffed into sleeping bags and left something like 150 yards away from where their campsite had been, and they ended up being found by the counselor who had reported having heard sounds in the woods, but didn't want to bother her fellow camp counselors about what she thought might be an animal. And it was too cold outside, she thought, for them to want to go walk out and look to see what was happening. In the morning, she's the one who was jogging and ended up stumbling upon what at first she thought was 1 girl in a sleeping bag. Then they thought was 2. It turns out 2 of the girls had been stuffed into one of the bags together. So all 3 girls were found. The crazy thing that I found out in my research is that there was supposed to be a 4th girl in the tent, and because of a clerical error, she ended up not being moved that night. And so her life was basically spared. She's unnamed, but her life was basically spared from not having...
Just happenstance.
Complete happenstance.
Didn't the killings take place, like, relatively close to where their tent was, too?
So, yeah, it was... I believe they were on their way back from the showers, if I'm not mistaken. And it was very close to the tent. But that tent, like I said, is the furthest thing in the camp from the counselors. So, because they were out there basically in the middle of nowhere by themselves... I mean, they were ripe for the picking, especially if it's who they think that it was, which is Gene Leroy Hart, I believe. Which, I mean,
he's got the 3 names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a jail escapee, and he'd been kind of living off the fat of the land, trying to stay uncaught. And they ended up catching him after all of this, and they pinned him for the murders. There was DNA left on the scene. I believe it was semen. So they... At that point in the 70s, they didn't have the ability to run any tests on those things. So he ended up going through the entire process and was acquitted on trial. So he stood trial but did not get found guilty.
They said that there wasn't enough evidence?
So they said that there wasn't enough evidence to specifically point to him. And in the coming years after that, like you said, there were several lawsuits that were done by parents of the 3 young women. Mm-hmm. And then I want to say they also started some like organizations as far as like
victims of children who have been murdered and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Have they since gone back to try and do DNA
Yes.
testing?
So,
Yes.
So that's something that I wanted to. I think we should go a little bit more into detail with is exactly what was found at the crime scene, because that is important in kind of part of why he was exonerated, why he didn't end up being charged for that. He did end up going to prison anyway for other crimes that he had been accused of. So he still ended up going to prison, I think,
And he died.
And he died almost right after he got to prison from a heart attack. I read he was lifting weights and then jogging immediately after for an hour straight and then just collapsed from a heart attack. But the thing was, one of the first things that they found was a bloody footprint in the tent that was a size 9.5. The man heart was a size, I believe, 11. So the shoe print was too small. They did find a long black hair, which he did have long dark hair. Problem is, at that time, like John had said, they couldn't do DNA testing on hair like that. So they really couldn't match any DNA to him. There was a fingerprint that was found on the lens of a red flashlight that was left in the...
Another red flashlight. Like, I mean, I think we've done, 4 or 5 true crime cases, and I think there's been at least 2 red flashlights that have been left behind at crime scenes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that fingerprint did not match him, and that was left. And so there are several things that don't quite match up. The main thing is that they ended up finding evidence in a cave. Some hikers were walking around outside of where the campground was, found a cave where someone had obviously been living, found some newspaper clippings from the Tulsa newspaper. They had found clippings from the same newspaper in the battery pack of the flashlight to, I guess, keep the batteries from rattling around, keep it quiet. And they also found a note on the wall that said the killer was here, the real killer was here, and then the date that the murders had happened.
Shit.
So they're pretty convinced that whoever the killer was, he was in that cave and had come into the camp from that cave, had probably been living there, like you had said, John. The man, Hart, was, I believe, Cherokee, and he had been, there was basically a bounty out. He was wanted for a lot of other things, assault being part of that entire thing, which is why they thought that the sheriff, I guess, said he was 1,000% convinced that it was Hart. But members of the public were not, and they actually raised money to try to help support getting him exonerated.
Yeah, there are a couple other wrinkles to that as well. Like there's a large group of people who are convinced that there were 2 people there, that there was a woman who was involved in the murders because of the
some of the
strand of
family.
black hair.
Yeah, some of the family said that they were convinced that there had to have been a woman there.
With the smaller
Why?
the smaller shoe print as well, that could have been a woman with a larger size shoe. But there's also, aside from that theory, there's also another person who admitted to the crimes while they were in jail. They were never tried for it. They would never went any further than that, but it wasn't Hart. It was some other guy.
Well, there's a man who is an ex-convict whose name I don't recall right off the top of my head, but he has for the last few years been trying to make a fictionalized, like a feature film version of this story, and it's because he was an inmate with a man who confessed to the murders.
Oh, shit.
And then passed away in prison. So now he wants to tell this story, but the thing hasn't really gotten off the ground. I checked the Facebook page yesterday when I was looking into this, and they have some more recent posts say like, "Hey, we cast somebody in this role maybe," and it seems very much like something that will maybe never get off the ground. But the movie is called Candles. If anybody wants to keep an eye on that, if they're at all interested.
And it was going through crowdfunding and everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that it's an interesting story in the fact that it's at a summer camp and it plays into a lot of these slasher tropes that we have just spent the last 2 months talking about. And I would watch a movie like that. I mean, obviously it's pretty gruesome, and I don't necessarily want to see 3 little girls get raped and murdered. But I think that seeing the real life encounters of some of these summer camps would be something that I would watch.
Yeah, it's scary just because it's that thing where when you really think about it, summer camp, being out in the wilderness, you kind of take it for granted that it's a scary thing. You really are just out in the middle of nowhere, and you have these, a lot of the time, late teen to early 20s people who are in charge of all of these kids, and they're in charge of their safety. And with a campground that was that big, like Camp Scott, I've seen maps, those kids were spread out by a long distance.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were close. I mean, it was very...
The camp looks huge when you look at the map, and they were way off down this path at the very end. So, I mean, to me, it just seemed like a bad setup if you didn't want anything to happen to these kids. And
it's part of the reason why the camp closed, in my opinion, is that it was negligently run, and I believe the lawsuit it went nowhere. I believe that Camp Scott actually ended up winning, or
Really?
like being exonerated
yeah,
of any wrongdoing.
I think that it sucks because when you're 10 or 10 to 8,
It was
right?
8 to 10 was the age of the girls who
Yeah.
were killed, but I believe the ages of the entire camp was somewhere between 7 and 14.
So, when you're that age, obviously the counselors were teenagers, probably late teenagers. That age difference, you look up to them. To them, to you, they're adults in a way. You know what I mean? And so an adult is supposed to protect you and keep you safe. And so that's got to be terrifying. But when you're a teenager, you don't really think of yourself as that role, as that protector.
Yeah.
So it's tough spot for those counselors to be like, well, I mean, what was I going to do? Because say you're at a camp and you're a 16-year-old girl, that's just as scary for you. If there's a big man out there taking down kids, like, well, I don't know what I would do in that situation if that were me in those shoes. You know what I mean?
Well, on top of that, especially considering these aren't their children,
Right.
there's a lack of maternal instincts when that comes to that sort of thing. They say that that sort of level of instinct does not kick in until you have a child, and not having that base instinct to go back to, a lot of times in those situations, your response will be flight instead of fight, which you can't really say anything against. Like, I mean, if you're a 20-year-old girl who is at this camp watching over these kids, and it's dark outside and everything is going to shit, and there's somebody out there who's killing people, what are you going to do other than get yourself killed in the process?
I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done anything.
This is
I certainly
true.
think they could have gone and tried to have at least gotten help, but it is a very scary situation to be
Well,
in.
and the thing that I was thinking a lot when I was watching the little YouTube video that kind of went through all this information, and it was kind of recounting the different people saying they had heard different things, I just kept telling myself, I know a lot of people try to give people in situations like this shit for like not doing something or not being responsible, and these people beat themselves up for the rest of their lives about not having done something. But I always try to put myself in that position and think, if I hear a weird noise outside, the last thing I do is go investigate what that weird noise is. Like, if I hear something, especially if you're out in the woods, like we went out to Yosemite and heard weird noises in the woods, and our assumption was it's probably a bear or an animal. Who's to say that it couldn't have been another person out in the woods, you know?
We turned around
And we turned around and we booked it. The thing is, if you hear weird sounds, that's normal in the woods. And I think, especially since a lot of the people who claim to have heard things were kids, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you think you heard something, the last thing you're going to do is get out of your tent and go tell somebody, I think. You're going to be scared and curl up and go back to sleep. So I really think that it's an unfortunate situation that, yes, especially when it comes down to having told somebody about that note and maybe having extra security around the camp, just in case, that's where
Keeping the tents closer?
That's where the decision could have been made to do things differently. I don't put as much fault on the counselors at the time for having done nothing, because obviously the person who did this had it planned out, had been casing the area, had already made a threat, knew what they were doing, and got in and out of there, you know, without anybody really realizing what was going on. So I'm not saying that it was inevitable, but I don't think that people should necessarily beat up the camp counselors, because if I was 20-something and in that position, I don't know what I would do. I can't say whether I would go out and investigate or not, you know?
Well, I think at this point we've seen enough horror movies to know to not go out and investigate. We're jaded by our knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's terrifying, and I think we're all in the same boat, as that we wouldn't fault them for what their specific actions were. Would you like to see somebody step up and do something about it? Absolutely. Do you fault somebody for not doing that? For somebody who is not related to them? They have a at the time probably a $3.50 responsibility to those children. Like, I mean,
Or they're,
at that point,
they're
you have
volunteers.
to, I mean, you have to think about you at some point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I definitely am not in the category of blaming anybody as far as the counselors go. It's very tragic, though, and I don't want to take away any other light from what happened to those little girls, because it's
terrible.
Well,
sad as shit.
and the things that I wanted, a couple things that I saw that I made a note specifically of was the girls did write letters home the night before, or the night that everything went down. Two of the girls had written about, you know, what their tent looked like and what camp was like. One of the girls had written that she didn't like camp at all and thought it was awful and that she wanted to come home. And that kind of stuff to me is always the saddest and the eeriest. And then after this happened, the younger sister of one of the girls had written a school project where she said every morning during the Pledge of Allegiance we say liberty and justice for all. And she said except for my family. which I thought was, for a young person to say, is very powerful and is a real indication that it's important to look into these cases as technology develops. That's something that I will talk a little bit more about in my watch list as something that I wanted to dive into. But there has been more of a push. One of the people in Oklahoma, the sheriff or the detective that is investigating this, is a boy who was 8 years old when this happened in the area. And he talks about how he remembers being their age, and he has basically not been able to forget it for his entire life. There are people who have been radically changed by these kind of things happening. Like you had said, John, earlier, the parents who have started support groups and things like that. But with DNA testing to where it is, they've tried over the past few years to do some DNA tests on some of the samples, but things are very deteriorated at this point.
Yeah,
but technology gets better all the time. So, I mean, I think it's something worth looking into, every couple of years and seeing if we can make some sort of breakthrough.
Yeah, they said that the last test that took place, which the last successful test that took place, that they had a certain level percentage match to heart with the samples that were found on the scene.
And that's when they also said that they had something that looked like a female profile, which
Exactly.
is why part of why people think that there would have been a woman. That's something I had forgotten when you asked why people thought that, is that part of the DNA profile seemed to match a woman.
It kind of seems like it relates in style, as far as the effect it had on the area, to something like Texarkana.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think Texarkana kind of embraced it and glorified it in a way, right, where they show the movie.
Yeah.
This, I don't think, has that kind of background to it, but it seems like based off the sheriff, who was a boy at the time, still diving into it, it kind of had that effect on the state.
I think that people just want to be able to say that the case is closed and that they found the culprit, even if that culprit, died 20 years ago in jail or whatever. They want to be able to say, it took a long time because of the situation, but we managed to get justice for those families. Which, like I said, it's fucking scary as shit. It really is. And I think that some of the reasoning why they ended up not actually charging him with them, like, as far as, like, getting him in jail for those killings, is because of, things like, as far as the DNA testing goes, being Cherokee, the pool is larger. Like, they share a lot of DNA profile. So you could say, oh, hey, even if it's a 50% match, that would be a 50% match for a lot of Cherokee people. And, I mean, at that point, especially in that area, it's heavily, like, a heavy area of Native people. So, it's hard to speculate at that point. But there's so much other evidence that points to him. And
do we think that him getting acquitted or whatever had anything to do with race in a way? That maybe they didn't want to push it because they didn't want to push it because he was Cherokee?
It was the 70s and 80s, so I doubt it.
I would say that they would be, if it was a race thing, it would be more likely that he would have gone to prison for the murders if that was the case.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something, the thing that, I'm glad you brought up Texarkana while we're talking about this, just because since we did that episode, I think all three of us have had conversations on the social media with people who have been talking about Texarkana, and that's part of what I enjoy about doing these tougher episodes, these episodes that are about things that actually happened, is that I learn a lot, and I also feel like now this is on my radar, so when I see people on our social media and stuff posting about it, there are a lot of true crime people that are very passionate about making sure everyone knows about these lesser known cases, and we're doing it, in a very non-professional way, but I think all of these people together having this interest is part of what makes breakthroughs happen. And having these kind of cases on your radar, even if it is just from listening to us, I think is a good way to say, hey, I'm going to go look into this. Because you never know if you're the person who puts two and two together on something and makes a post, and then boom, there's some sort of progress. Or
yeah, if you're the big brain motherfucker that cracks the case.
Exactly,
God damn it.
You never know.
Do you guys know if there are any visual mediums that have done a dramatized version of this, movies or TV shows? Or
There's a documentary that came out in, I think it was the late 90s. It's something like Suffer the Little Children, and but the only way that I was able to find it was on a really crappy bootleg picture-in-picture version on YouTube. So, and I didn't want to watch it that way. So if I could find it somewhere, I would definitely check it out. But that is as far as I could find in terms of documentaries that have been made.
And then obviously the one that's been in development hell from Kickstarter for a while.
And I think that's just a thing that has to do with the fact that it was very young children.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot harder, I think, to make that into some sort of glamorized horror movie or something when it was 3 little girls.
It sounds like it would have made a good episode for the original run of Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Part of when I was reading the article for this, it was all ads for Unsolved Mystery.
Oh, really?
Like the whole thing was for Unsolved Mystery. So I would not be surprised if this was something that has been on Unsolved Mysteries. I didn't check that, but or the case that they have on their website. But hey, yeah, exactly. With Unsolved Mysteries having come back and people getting all hyped on that kind of sleuthing from home, definitely go research this topic and absorb even more information than we did, and you know, see what you think about it.
So that will wrap it up for our discussion on the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. If there is anything we missed, then please drop us a line on any of our socials or at porcelainpeak.com.
We're at 444-4444
For legal help.
Other than that, we'll go ahead and jump into our watch list.
Look what I did. I packed you and your cousin some goodies for the ride up to camp. Wasn't that nice of me?
Any chips?
Why, of course. I believe there's a whole bag.
I'll get us started, and in the realm of true crime and sleuthing, I watched I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is the documentary series about the Golden State Killer that was cracked by Patton Oswalt's wife, which is super random.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second to say that I'm going to piggyback on that because I also watched it, and it was half of my watch list. I'm not upset about that. I'm just saying that we can now just discuss. Yeah.
Did you watch? I've only seen the one episode so far. I think the second one just came out.
I watched both.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
But it was good, and it's very interesting, and it's another one of those cases that just went unsolved for so long. Probably could do an episode about it, especially since it is so close to home for us.
And obviously, R.I.P. To Michelle McNamara. She's the one who cracked the case, and I know for sure that the true crime community and like the people who write a lot of the books and stuff around that genre sorely miss her style of writing and her style of investigating.
Well, and the thing that impressed me about the documentary was just that one of the things was, when I was watching it, I felt like by the end of that second episode, even by the end of the first episode, I felt, wow, I am sad that she passed. No, now that I know about her, not as a lot of people know, which is like, oh, it's sad that Patton Oswalt's wife passed away.
She was her own thing.
And like watching what she did, I was like, oh, Patton Oswalt can like get the hell out of this documentary. Like I think he's funny and everything, and I'm glad. Obviously, you know, it's his wife and everything. But I'm like, I want to see her doing the sleuthing and stuff because that's the stuff that I think is very inspiring and actually pretty incredible. Like hearing some of the breakthroughs she made just being an internet sleuth. That's why that's why I said so much in this episode about people learning about this case because that's how the breakthroughs happened. That's how.
What I thought was particularly heartbreaking too was having him sit down and go through it all. I mean, I'm sure he's done it a bunch of times. And he's probably gone to conventions and shit talking about it. But I was like, man, this poor guy having to relive probably one of the worst moments of his life.
Mm-hmm. But you can tell that he loved her.
Oh, totally.
You know, more than anything, and loved what she did, and loved that she was so passionate and smart. And it's just nice to see someone really just have so much respect for their partner, you know, and so much love for them. And
they made a life together. I mean, that's not only a life together, but they also had a child as well, which is a very important part of his life too. So
yeah, I think it's an incredibly well put together documentary. Very hard to watch is what I will say. You know, I try as much as possible now, understanding that not everybody is a hardcore horror fan. That, you know, it does involve a lot of talk and some description from some of the victims of rape and assault and things like that. So if you're a bit squeamish, maybe take it one episode at a time with a break. I watched both back to back, and I was pretty mentally exhausted after that, and a little bit depressed. So definitely well put together, super inspiring, and I'm looking forward to more episodes.
All right. I have another one, but I think that you're probably going to talk about it, so I'll just piggyback on you when that time comes.
Okay.
And I'll shoot it over to you, John, for your recommendations this week.
Okay, so you guys have watched this before, probably a long time ago. And it's also something that I should have watched a very, very long time ago. Finally found the hour and 15 minutes to sit down and watch Creep.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It was very good. I mean, it's essentially two guys and a camera. And what they're able to accomplish in that is absolutely inspiring. I mean, it's not a very big budget film. I mean, it's just a cabin, one camera, all found footage style, and just the back and forth of like getting sent the deep. Like it I don't want to spoil anything because it makes a left turn that you don't expect. You expect it to end in a certain place at a specific point, and then it makes a left turn and things continue to go out into left field for like another 30 to 40 minutes. And I was completely shocked by how it ended up. And Mark Duplass is fucking incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he's crazy smart, and it's just always super fun to see these comedians who, unsurprisingly, are able to just pull off horror really well. Obviously Jordan Peele, we can talk, that's the biggest example, but Duplass has done great things in sci-fi and horror. The movie that he was in,
it's the one about time
with
travels.
Elizabeth Moss.
Oh,
the one I love.
The one I love.
That's a different
Safety
one.
Not Guaranteed.
Safety Not Guaranteed.
Safety Not Guaranteed, yeah.
Right. And I think that this is kind of stupid, but Creep is kind of the perfect title for this movie because he is just a fucking creep. Like,
yeah,
it's perfect.
He seems like a person like that it would actually exist.
Yeah,
which is scary. And I was telling John that I feel like the second part, while not being quite as good, is a really good companion piece to the first one. I feel like it does really well to watch them close together.
Yeah, I want to
too.
watch it for sure.
I feel like on initial viewing, when because I've only seen them both once, that I liked the second one more because we get a lot more development, and it does kind of this weird artist versus art thing if you kind of dive into it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think they're both great.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for the third one if it ever happens.
I'm super excited that you checked that out, and I am jealous that you get to watch the second one. I might rewatch both of them because it's been a while.
Do it.
So the first part of my watch list was the documentary, so glad that you enjoyed that as well. The second part is I had heard the news from Ashley the intern that Ju-on origin show was going to be dropping, and we'd all made the joke, we sure as hell hope it's better than that dog shit movie that came out at the beginning of the year. I saw, hey, it's on Netflix, checked it out, ended up watching the whole thing in like a night, and then took a break and finished it in the morning. And it is probably the most like brutal thing I've seen in a while, in terms of content.
Right. So I've seen 2 episodes at this point. Mm-hmm. This is what I wanted to piggyback on, and the first one ends pretty heavily. I was like, oh fuck.
And then the second one picks up on that exact scene and goes even further with it, which I was like,
and then it gets weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much like it's a staple with the Ju-on franchise and The Grudge is the interweaving timelines. Mm-hmm. That's done to full effect in the show, so this can be very confusing. I opted to watch it in Japanese with subtitles. I don't know if you decided to do the dub. I know that's available. You tend to be the monster who likes to do that. I decided, because I really wanted to immerse myself in the original language of Ju-on. Having seen none of the movies, I thought, okay, I'll go into this, and besides the remake and this new one, I was like, I hope this is better. And overall, it is. It's a whole hell of a lot better. It ties up in a very interesting way that I actually really enjoyed. I would just say it can be incredibly confusing to watch, and you're probably not going to understand what the hell is going on for almost the entirety of the show. There's just too many fucked up things happening to too many people. And that's the thing, too, is if you are at all sensitive to things like sexual assault, domestic abuse, gore, this is a very difficult show to watch, and a lot of people have written about how a lot of this seems like it may just be for shock value and not necessarily for the content of the show. But I would say, again, Ju-on is known for dealing in themes of women being abused by men, being assaulted by men, and the grudge that is created from that. So if you have the stomach for it, it's 6 30-minute episodes. It is pretty gorgeously shot. The acting is very good. And there's some pretty insane practical effects, like gore-wise, later in the season that I think people who are fans of that will really enjoy. I would just say it did make me feel a little bit sick at one point, with just how over the top it was getting. So just go in, maybe not having just eaten like a few chili cheese dogs or something, because you might end up. You might end up. Don't pretend, Anthony. Like that's not your like MO.
Your modus operandi.
Yeah. So that is my watch list. Is the I'll Be Gone in the Dark and Ju-on Origins on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep checking that out. But that will wrap it up for the watch list, which means that it will also wrap it up for this week's episode. Next week, we are going to be writing and reading our own creepy camp stories.
Mine's gonna blow.
Who started theirs? John?
Sort of.
Anthony?
I'm gonna start brainstorming pretty soon.
I've been thinking about starting.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm gonna do what I usually do and fly by the seat of my pants, pull something out of my ass, and hope that it's even remotely scary.
Hopefully that works out for you guys. That is gonna be it though, and we'll see you next week with those. I have been Counselor Tone,
I've been Counselor John.
and here's the spiel from
Your boy, Counselor Anthony.
Perfect. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully that didn't get too graphic for you. If it did, we apologize and post. And we'll see you next week with some original camp stories.
Keep it campy.
You can find Porcelain Peak on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, TuneIn, and Stitcher. Wherever you listen, don't forget to rate, review, share, and subscribe so you never miss a spine-tingling episode. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at porcelainpeak.com for additional content. Special thanks to Randy Greer for composing the Porcelain Peak intro music and to Anthony Silva for designing the Porcelain Peak logo. All episodes and additional content is hosted, written, produced, designed, and edited by the Porcelain Peak team, consisting of Anthony Perez, John Brasher, and Anthony Silva.
This has been here words for a Weirdos production.